still sends shivers up your spine, doesn't it, listening to those words? Welcome back to Sportsday. Sam McClure and Matt Granland with you. And we have the great pleasure of introducing a man who all of our listeners would know. At 56, he took Celtic to the Premiership and also the Scottish League Cup in his maiden campaign and won the hearts, Matty, of Celtic fans who had otherwise, were wanting to put the misery of the previous season firmly behind them. He did so, and the man himself, Ange Postecoglou, has been good enough to join us live on Sports Day all the way from his holiday in Greece. Welcome, Ange, and sorry for interrupting.
Like I said, mate, we never stop, even on the break. But no, all good, lads. Having a break, which well deserved, not just for myself and my family, but all good. Good to talk to you.
You probably don't get an opportunity to sit back and reflect, Ange, until a time like this. You'd be so caught up in the moment. Have you been able to do it?
Yeah, sort of. Sam, it's one of those where you kind of, any coach or manager will tell you, you're constantly thinking about the next step, and so you win something and then you're thinking, oh, well, we've got to go again. But I really took a moment sort of probably in a few days after just to maybe reflect on, it was a hell of a year because it was a year ago almost to the day that I left Japan and sort of went across mid-season. And, I think this time last year I was stuck in isolation in a hotel somewhere trying to put together a plan that I hope would bring us success. So when you think about the starting point where we finished up, it was an enormous effort and, proud of sort of the fact that we were able to pull it off.
And I suppose, Ange, you probably can't walk down the street where you live now. Like I saw some of the scenes, and like you're now in obviously having a bit of a break. Tell us about that. I mean, everywhere you go, are people literally coming up, thanking you and wanting to get a picture? And tell us about that side of it.
Yeah, no, Matt, to be fair, right from the start, I mean, it's just that sort of city where, as you guys can imagine, there's kind of only two clubs that are of any interest in the city of Glasgow, and you can't escape it, particularly if you become manager of one of the two clubs. And it meant adjusting in terms of lifestyle for the family, and we try to keep it as normal as possible. And I think that's, the first few times when we ventured out to a shopping centre, we figured out that doesn't sort of can't happen anymore. So particularly for the family, but everyone was, really welcoming, and I guess having success helps that. But it was an adjustment, and in terms of, the instant recognition people have of me as opposed to maybe when I was back home a little bit. At the same time, I love it, mate. People are just passionate about sport. They're passionate about their football club. That's the stuff I love. So happy to sort of, fit in with that.
And there's been talk both over in Scotland and here about a long-term contract extension. Is that going to happen?
Oh, no, mate, I've never worried about that. Sam, long-term contracts in coaching really mean absolute jack, mate, as anyone will tell you, because it's one of those things where in my career anyway, I've never worried about my contract length or sort of my security. I kind of work as if I'll be there forever, knowing that I won't be. And, I'm really happy at the football club. I've had an amazing year. I've had amazing support, and it's everything I've ever wanted in a football club. It's a massive club. It's geared for success, which, that's kind of, I'm a pretty driven guy in terms of success. We've got Champions League football next year. They're the kind of things that are important to me, contracts and all those other factors that kind of people are more interested in just don't enter my thinking. So I'm very happy where I am, and as long as the club want me to stay, I'll be sticking around.
It is a tough job though, Ange, because I mean you came in with a lot of people being like, well, who is this guy? What's going to happen here? And you're a short-term deal, and yet you've over-delivered to the point where everyone just wants more of you. And I guess as a coach, you want security because you know as well as anyone that things can change very quickly, and you're often seen as the problem when things start going bad, even if you're not. So it would be nice to be rewarded in sorts for when you do well.
Nah, Sam, I'm not interested, mate. Security is the last thing I've ever worried about in my coaching tenure. I would try to explain it to people that, I've been doing this now for 25 years. I think I've been since I first started South Melbourne, and what drives me is the insecurity of it. I every time I've felt secure in a role, and every time I've left a role, you guys will know my history, whether it was at Yokohama or Socceroos or Melbourne Victory, Brisbane Roar, South Melbourne. I've kind of left probably because of that factor that I needed another challenge, not because of if I wanted security, I probably could have stayed in those roles. So security doesn't drive me, never has. What drives me is, the challenge of what's next. And as long as that challenge is there, that's what kind of gets me up in the morning and has me coaching at my best. I get it what people from the outside kind of look at, a coach's existence and sort of worry about the trepidation of not knowing the future. But there's part of every manager, every coach that loves that. We love the fact that on a weekend, our future is always on a knife edge. If we all knew it was going to happen, most of us wouldn't be doing what we're doing.
As Sam said, you did have some critics when you first got there. Who is this bloke and all the rest of it? And you would have had that at other places, but this is a whole new level. How did you cope with that? Did you listen to any of it? It's probably hard not to, hear it and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, what do you reckon, mate? No, it doesn't impact me at all. As you said, I've had it. To be fair, I've kind of had it through my whole career. There's always, I think, probably because I have always tried to take on a bigger challenge whenever I've moved. The people have always said, "Well, okay, he's done okay, but what was he going to do at this level? Whether it was from club level to national team, from national team to say Japan or going to Europe." Definitely, when I came here, there was a bigger sort of unknown factor around me. But again, that's the stuff that I kind of find motivating. I've always used it as a bit of a weapon for myself. Is I think whenever you walk into a joint and people underestimate you, I think you can use that to your advantage. And I kind of have overplayed that sometimes for my own purposes. I'm happy with people sort of write me off or don't think I'll be able to take on the next challenge, because that gives me an advantage until they figure out that we've had success, and by then it's too late.
I just want to ask you a general question about coaching internationally, and this has always fascinated me about world coaches, and that is communication, okay? So you coach in Japan, you coach in Scotland, and some players you're coaching probably English isn't their first language. In Scotland, you've got a strong Australian accent. Some of your players have strong Scottish accents. Just that, and they say communication is key between coach and player. How does that logistically work?
Yeah, it's fair to say that in Japan and in Scotland, English is not their first language, mate, because Scots speak totally different. So, yeah, look, that's the bit I've loved. I've had to get creative. Japan, it meant using an interpreter, which really challenged my communication skills. So it's one of those where I had to be really clear and concise, because if I had a sort of half-hour team talk and then the translator went on for half an hour, we'd be sitting there for an hour. So I had to really make sure that all my points were really clear. And it's the same in Scotland, as you said. That's a bit I love. I'm dealing with guys from different backgrounds, different cultures. At Celtic, we literally have got players from all over the world who join the football club. And it's not just about communicating with them, it's about understanding them as people, because they've had a different upbringing and different values maybe and from a cultural perspective than I have. And it's about embracing all that. But I love that. I think that's the bit that I really enjoy, that it tests me as an individual, because ultimately that's, the key component for any coach is that doesn't matter how much knowledge you have, it's your ability to communicate that with the people who are most important that counts. And, I've had to get creative. You use a lot of visuals. I've become a decent stick drawer on the whiteboard to make my points if I needed to. So, but again, that's the bits I love.
Ange, what's the latest with the Tommy Rogic situation, both from a Celtic standpoint and Socceroos?
Yeah, from a Celtic standpoint, as you saw, that was his last game, which was a great way for Tom to end. He's a legend of the football club, mate. I think in Australia we probably haven't realised the impact that he's had on Celtic and Scottish football. When you look at his highlights reel, mate, it's unbelievable the amount of important goals and important moments for Celtic. Like I said, he goes down as a legend. I've had a great relationship with Tom over the last sort of few years, national team, but particularly this last 12 months. And, he kind of felt it was time for him to move on. And I thought it was a great way for him to finish as a champion. And I'm not sure what his next step is. I've kind of left him alone. Yeah, obviously he's pulled out of the Socceroos, which is a blow to the Socceroos, I guess. But, hopefully over the next sort of period he gets his immediate future sorted out because he's still got a lot of good football in him.
And holistically, I'm sure you don't spend much time thinking about it, given you've got enough on your plate. But the Socceroos in Australian football, we've just seemed to labour a bit recently, Ange, and struggle. Have you got a thought as to why?
I've got a million thoughts, mate. We haven't got the time, and I've kind of. But look, in terms of Socceroos, irrespective of what's happened, they've got 2 games to get to a World Cup, mate. You can't get any more sort of focused or clear-eyed than that, and that's what there has to be around the thought process around the Socceroos camp. I'm sure it is with Graham Arnold and the players there. They know they're actually 2 games away from another World Cup, and we shouldn't take them for granted, mate, because last night Scotland lost the Ukraine, and we got 4 boys in the Scotland squad, and they haven't been to a World Cup since '96. So when you miss out, that's when you realise just how big an event it is, and I don't want us to miss out this time. So big couple of games, and in terms of football, look, the A-League, as we know, it's kind of ebbed and flowed over the last sort of period. The only upside, I've seen some really good youngsters get an opportunity over the last sort of 12 months. I think you're still in the All-Stars game. There's some good young boys coming through, which I think will help in the long term. But obviously there's some short-term fixes that need to happen.
Yeah, there's probably a longer conversation that we could have over a couple of hours about the state of Australian football. You mentioned thriving on insecurity. What about the Champions League? How exciting that must be, both for the club and the fans and also for you.
Yeah, massive, mate. I mean, you watched sort of Liverpool Real Madrid the other day, and likelihood is we'll probably get one of those, knowing my luck in draws. Irrespective.
That is true. You have been unlucky in draws.
Yeah. Irrespective, we'll get the big guns, and I can't wait, and the club can't wait. I mean, people tell me that probably the most special atmosphere you're ever going to get is a Champions League night at Celtic Park. It's everyone I've spoken to said it's a magic event. So yeah, it's looking forward to it. It's you can't get any higher in terms of the level of competition in club football, and it's where this club needs to be, deserves to be. It has won it once, which was an amazing achievement back in '67, and from my perspective, no better place for me to sort of challenge myself and what I'm trying to build. So it's an exciting sort of year coming up.
Certainly is. Ange, it's a great privilege for us to be able to speak to you. I know we don't have much more time, but thank you so much for taking a moment out of your break. And it's just almost ticking up to midday, I think, Greece time. So might be some time by the pool for you.
Yeah, big decisions now, mate. Pool or beach, but I'll sort of have a good think about it. And you haven't mentioned the Blues, Sam. Go Blues, mate. We're firing.
I was waiting. I was waiting for you to mention them.
Yeah, good man.